We are live.
We are live once again. Welcome in to Inside Carolina's On the Beat Live, sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt and JohnnyT-Shirt.com. The, the microphone's still a work in progress. It sounds good to me, but that's just me. So if it's off there a little bit, please somebody chime in the chat and let me know. That's Adam Smith, Jeremiah Holloway, and producer John Bowman keeping it all together. And as Sean Crowley says, smash that like button. I started to say smack that like button.
Whoop that. Oh, sorry.
Jeremiah, I'm coming to you first. I am mixing it up because I like the headline I just saw. It said Mac Brown warns of complacency with 3-0 start. This Tar Heel football team has been here before. He knows it. The fans know it. What's different this year, Jeremiah?
Yeah, well, I'll have to give a real quick shout out to Jeremy Sharp, SID over at UNC. He did give me the stat that I put in there. They've had one 4-0 start since 1997. I'm sorry, one 4-0 start since 1983, which came in 1997. As far as what's different, one thing that I kind of noticed about this 3-0 start compared to last year, the competition they played, I feel like is better than the first three teams. Obviously, App State's the repeat, but I feel like the overall level of competition has been better. And I think since they were so close to accomplishing so much last year, obviously the 9 wins in the Coastal is great. And then Drake May getting his name out there individually was great. They had several guys get to the NFL draft. But I think as a team, all of a sudden an ACC title became realistic and a bowl game win became realistic and a 10-win season became realistic. So I think now you're looking at a team that understands what it could do because of how close it came to doing that last year. And I think the main difference is since they see so much of that being attainable, they're looking to do, and they have so many veteran guys. Like we had Cedric Gray today, and we know Cedric Gray. He didn't say it today, but in the past he said, he came back to win and to get some stuff done. So I think that's a lot of what the difference is: the experience and just everything that transpired last year.
Adam, is that experience as big a deal as it feels like it is? Because it feels like it's a big deal. I mean, you got a ton of guys with a ton of reps, a ton of games. But like Jeremiah said, specifically, a guy like Jeremiah Holloway, a guy like Cedric Gray.
A guy like Jeremiah Holloway.
Hey, get him a helmet.
Jeremiah Holloway.
It is accurate. Yeah, it's 100% accurate. You bring that kind of experience to this show, it just makes us all better.
Hey, there you go.
And let me, before I forget, Jeremiah and Evan Rogers on Inside Carolina Live this past Saturday from the Bowls Lot allowed me to go eat, and and nobody missed me. And that's amazing. I love it. I love to see the youth stand up and make us all old guys all proud.
We got depth, man.
That's what I said. There is depth on the roster here, and now it's quality depth. Absolutely. Adam, Carolina's experience in this type situation, be it last year, be it the year before when they were supposed to be good and they just weren't. A lot going for them to change this narrative heading up. I entitled the show Primetime Business Trip to Pitt. And it just feels that way for this team. It's just a business trip. The question is, do you think they're ready to actually put that in motion, actually accomplish that?
Well, Tommy, I do. Why would I ever disagree with you, T.A.?
Please do sometimes.
I mean, I do. And I mean, I think that I don't think they're exactly going to play the defending Super Bowl champions, Kansas City Chiefs. This, not to crap on Pitt, but I don't, they're not going too great right now. But yeah, I mean, the experience is there. There are a lot of college graduates. There are a lot of graduate school guys. I mean, think of how many 5th and 6th and 7th year seniors. They have a ton of just experienced dudes. Even the transfer guys, obviously, are almost all grad transfers. What is it on the line? 3 6th-year guys and 1 7th-year guy on the offensive line. So yeah, I mean, I do think the experience is there. I think Carolina through 3 games looks like a confident team in a lot of ways. I think we all could agree that they haven't played, the A game yet. And obviously getting out of the App game alive with a win was a big deal because they could have easily lost that game. But yeah, I mean, I think this is an experienced and confident group, and I think the way the ACC looks, I think that thing is wide slap open. At least right now here in the middle of September. So yeah, I mean, I think that the fact that the last 2 times Carolina has played up there at Pitt have been losses in overtime, both of them, and there's a lot of guys that remember those games. And I mean, the game 2 years ago, I mean, obviously, as we've talked about, it's pouring down rain in overtime when Carolina has the ball. After Pitt scores, there's a lot of people. Drake has only started, he's only in his second year, but he was up there that night. Like they took him, even though it was Sam Howell's job and Jacoby Criswell was in the mix, they took 3 quarterbacks everywhere in 2021. And I think that was helpful for Drake because he went all over the place with them. He went to Notre Dame, he did the whole deal. So yes, I'm not going to disagree with you on this one, TA. I think their experience. I think this is a game they should win, and I think they should put them away. Honestly,
Tommy, I'm going to answer your question even more definitively than Adam, and I'm going to say this is a distinctly different start in terms of the 3-0 start than the last 2 times that UNC has started 3-0. So if you go back to that 2020 season, they started 3-0 with wins over Syracuse, Boston College, and Virginia Tech. But that Boston College win was a squeaker. That was on the road against Phil Jerkovic, as you covered on the Day After podcast, Tommy. But there was also a game in there in which they gave up 45 points to Virginia Tech. Then you flip the calendar last year, that 3-0 start. That included a game against App State where UNC had a post-game win expectancy of 43.6, and they gave up 28 points to Georgia State and 24 points to Florida A&M. This 3-0 start is different. UNC has beaten quality opponents, but they themselves have also looked very good. If you look at the post-game S&P Plus win expectancy from this season, UNC with a 94.1% post-game win expectancy against South Carolina, 96% against App State, and 97% against Minnesota. This is a team that is laying its foot on the gas pedal to start the year, and it's a distinctly different start than some of the other 3-0 starts that Mac Brown has referenced.
And just to add to that, I think it's I was trying to dig up the stat here. I think UNC is one of 4 teams nationally. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, that has won 2 out of conference games against power conference opponents. I think it's 4. It's like Utah, Carolina. I've got it here somewhere. But it's a select group. And I think that's I thought I had it here, but I think Carolina's one of 4. And go ahead.
No, I think you're right there, but I've got a stat, and I never have stats.
Oh,
because I finally figured out how to log in to PFF. North Carolina, 13th on PFF rankings. Strength of schedule to date, 1 being the hardest in the nation. North Carolina, the 5th hardest schedule thus far. Conversely, they have the 90th ranked schedule remaining. So 5th is by far the highest in the top 13. Texas at 12, Alabama at 14. The rest are down. Florida State's up there as well. But 90th is by far the quote-unquote easiest remaining schedule of any teams there. So I agree with John in this. And by the way, they predict the average wins to be 9.7. So that would be the over, folks, if you go back to the Over-Under podcast. But that being said, they have to go up to Pitt and do it. Adam and Jeremiah, one question I didn't hear asked, and it should have been, is who's watching the weather radar as this game is played? Because everybody 2 years ago saw that storm coming, and Carolina deferred and let Pitt take the ball, or Pitt got the ball to open it, and then the arc weather started. So anyway, I mean, I was not there personally, but people I know were there, and you guys were there covering. It poured, and Carolina had no shot to tie that game up or to win that game.
And Mac Brown was dripping wet afterward. I mean, absolutely soaked. It was dripping off of him.
You talking about looking like somebody lost their dog in the rain. The entire Carolina team that day and the fan base. Just a disaster of an overtime. Let's look at this some more. And John Thorpe, no, I'm not picking 12-0 ever again just because the masses want it, and I'm not doing what the masses want. Cedric Gray is a guy that we know he's a leader, but watching him the last 2.5 years in post game press conferences, he's become not only a leader in the locker room but a leader in that regard as well. And you can't overestimate the importance of that. Your take on what he's doing, not only on the field, he led the nation in tackles, or close to it last year. He's got great numbers this year, but his leadership standpoint and what it means to this team this season, especially with a team that's got a ton of veterans that may not need to be led or want to be led, he's still able to accomplish it, and everybody's following.
Yeah, so I've said it on this podcast before that I'm a Baltimore Ravens fan, and so I have to make the analogy of he's kind of taken on the Ray Lewis role a little bit, of kind of being that linebacker kind of anchor on the defense. I think when I look at it, when I heard him talk today, it's clear that he's somebody that's really established himself as one of the primary voices, and he's a guy that a lot of those guys respect on the defensive side. He was talking a lot about how he learned a lot from Jeremiah Gemmel, who was there. He was really, kind of that guy before Cedric Gray became a starter and took over. And he's really took it upon himself. He was saying that he felt that he was blessed to have have leadership abilities and have leadership qualities. And so what he's doing is he's trying to, take advantage of that essentially and transfer that onto the rest of the team and the rest of the roster. As you guys mentioned, there's a lot of experienced guys. Some of those guys are, they might have more experience in college football, but haven't been around UNC necessarily because some of it might be by way of transfer or whatever the case may be. So, Cedric Gray is somebody that's, pretty much established himself. Obviously with his play, you can't help but respect the play on the field. I think that does play a lot into it. But you heard Mac Brown talking about him being a on-field leader. He's going over to a huddle to, send a message to the team, and he's giving that exact message as soon as he gets over there. So I think Cedric Gray, yes, with his talent, he makes a lot of plays. I mean, he's been responsible for, I think, 2 of the interceptions UNC's had so far, if I remember correctly, or maybe just 1, but at least 1. But at any rate, I think that, him doing what he's – and you just hear it. Like, you hear the level of leadership when he talks, when he was up there, at the podium today. You just hear it and you just understand that he just kind of has the mindset to, kind of lead and, and take over in that way.
Adam, your take there. You've done this for a long time, covered North Carolina football for a good while. Who not picking Ray Lewis, since that gets some folks fired up for non-football reasons, I guess. Who does he remind you of for North Carolina? Is there a guy?
Oh, man. You put me on the spot here, TA.
Absolutely. We're all about spots. While you're talking, Phil Jurkovec, 195th ranked quarterback on PFF. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Phil Jurkovec has his last 2 games is 18 for 52 passing for a crisp completion percentage of 34.6, which ain't gonna win you many games. That's a stat. I'm getting a message on my cellular phone that it was. Yeah, I had actually looked it up to the person texting me. It was it's UNC, Colorado, Utah, and Fresno State are the only 4 teams nationally that have beaten 2 power conference foes. UNC, Utah, Colorado, Fresno State. But I appreciate the person texting me, and I appreciate them watching as always.
I bailed you out. Now I need a comp. I need a Carolina comp or any comp.
Carolina player from the past. Gosh, I don't know. I just listening to Jeremiah talk. I think definitively Cedric Gray is the leader of that defense and maybe the entire team. It was a bad moment last year for Carolina when Notre Dame came in and sort of just steamrolled them and manhandled them in Keenan, and a lot of people were disappointed. And Tony Grimes was pushing people, and it was a bit of a mess. And I remember I wrote a column off that game that said you should listen to Cedric Gray because, I feel like the guy speaks with a lot of there's a lot of gravity in what the man says. David Thornton, that's a guy I went to school with.
There's another one right there.
I would disagree on Brandon Spoon being a leader, but I consider Brandon Spoon a friend. Brandon Spoon didn't talk. I grew up with Brandon Spoon, but he was not a vocal leader.
Oh, we need to hear those stories.
That guy was jacked. You ought to see what that guy was lifting when he was like 15 years old. It was ridiculous. The two of us happened to be on the dream team in Alamance County, the drug resistance education through athlete mentors. And we would go to different elementary schools in the mid-90s. And I was like 175 pounds and looked like a nerd. And Spoon looked like a freaking Greek god. I mean, it was unreal, the muscles on that guy at that age. So, it looked like you were with your like daddy walking. Everyone wanted to talk to Spoon. Nobody wanted to talk to me, which for good reason. But I'm stalling. I don't have a comparison. I don't know if I have a comparison. I love it in terms of on the beat stuff. Brian Simmons, maybe. Yeah. How about K Mays? K Mays was a very outspoken dude. I mean, if you think about like the Julius Peppers and the Greg Ellises and the Ebenezer Ekubans, they were sort of quiet guys, I always thought. I mean, Peppers did not talk, but he was a monster. I think of K Mays, he did not shut up. K Mays, who once broke Shaquille O'Neal's Texas high school basketball scoring record, by the way.
Wow. Look at those stats you can only find.
I think he scored like 70 points in a high school game. God knows who they were playing. But,
Thorpe in the chat was thinking where I was going. K-Red.
Yeah.
Kevin Riddick.
Can't disagree with that one.
I think the bottom line is Carolina's had a lot of talented linebackers in that role that have been very important to the defense. Some defenses were better than others, but there's always seemed to have been a linebacker that was just a beast for Carolina. That was mostly the leader of the defense. And I think Ced Gray, like y'all said, is definitely that guy. My favorite thing Mac said about Power Eccles or about the team is he didn't have to tell Power to get ready. That dude's always ready. And so there's no reason to talk to Power. He's ready to go. Talking about Power, Jeremiah, Power had a nice play, a tip drill interception, but he was taken advantage of a little bit against App State with some of the skills. North Carolina going to Pittsburgh with a struggling quarterback. We'll just get right into this game and move off of the last 3 weeks. How do those linebackers play on Saturday night? Are they the App State version, or are they every other game version against a team like Pittsburgh that wants to be physical?
Yeah, I was talking a little bit actually with Adam earlier today, just the idea that Minnesota, a lot because of the size that they have, and yes, their style of play too, but they're also a pretty physical football team as well. And so I think the fact that you get that back-to-back, that almost helps you in preparation too. Just the rep of playing against a team that's as physical as Minnesota was. Now there's some differences there, some differences schematically, I think, but I don't know. I think when you look at the linebacker core, one thing that's interesting to point out while I'm thinking about it, Cedric Gray, I think, has actually played every snap so far. Power Eccles has played almost every snap, in the linebacker room. So I think because of the fact that you just got Minnesota and you just saw what kind of work there, from a physicality standpoint, you should expect them to perform, I guess, more similar to how Minnesota was. This is the thing about App State, real quick. I just think App State, from a game plan perspective, just had a better game plan than UNC did that game. I really just think App State was, more prepared. I don't even think it was a thing of UNC underestimated them or came out flat. I really just think App State put together a better game plan, and that's why you saw a lot of the success that they had, especially on the offensive side of the ball. But I think that linebacker group, should be good. Here's the interesting thing about the Pitt quarterback. I was watching the Pat Narduzzi press conference a little bit earlier, they're sticking with him. I mean, they're really not trying to. I know you got teams like Alabama with some of their quarterback issues and whatever and stuff like that. But Pitt's saying, hey, like we're gonna roll with this guy because the locker room. I mean, this is the guy that they know and everything like that. So they sound pretty committed to him. So we'll see if they make a change mid-game. It doesn't sound like they will. He's been struggling. Pitt right now is. I think they have the fewest passing yards per game right now among ACC teams. They're at 178. Not very good, especially when you start in 1 and 2. So, but I think as far as the linebacker play, if Cedric Gray is able to kind of get pressure on the quarterback like he did, I would say probably last week, then I think that unit should be straight.
Yeah, Jeremiah, I like the point you made there about the similarity between Pitt and Minnesota. I think about these two games as being more similar than different. CFB Numbers on Twitter puts out a chart each week with ESPN QBR and PFF offensive grade, and there's a few quarterbacks in the bottom left quadrant. That's where you don't want to be. The Greek Rifle from Minnesota is down there. Cade McNamara from Iowa is down there. Noah Kim, not the kicker, but the quarterback at Michigan State is down there, along with Phil Jurkovec. So I think it's going to be a very similar game that we're going to see this upcoming Saturday, where you have a pretty putrid Pitt offense, a little bit of alliteration there, coming out and taking the field. But they have a solid defense that I think is going to test UNC and test Drake May. So it's not an opponent to be taken lightly, but I do think the games may play out very similarly on Saturday.
I definitely could see that happening. Also, I mean, does John's shirt not make you want to play some golf? Like, there's something about it that I just want to, our offices are right across from Finley Golf Course. There's nothing like looking out there and just like, kind of makes you want to just like.
Is it open yet? Because I'm tempted just to walk out there with a club and just.
Well, no, there were people playing today.
Really?
I was taking note. I was like, oh, okay.
It is a beautiful golf course. They've only made more beautiful.
I was over at the office on Monday, and from about 4 p.m. to about 6 p.m., every jogger and bicycler in Chapel Hill came by. It was kind of like just taunting the hell out of me, like, oh, hey, like
it's beautiful out, 75 and sunny.
It's perfect. Yeah. But I was thinking as we were talking about Pitt, like, how about Drake May? I pointed at him today. I didn't mean to, but I was like, this guy doesn't forget. And he mentioned the Pitt linebacker. I had forgotten about it. The Pitt linebacker who, during the middle of the week last year before they played Carolina, made the comments in front of TV cameras and microphones. Like, if we happen to hurt Carolina's quarterback, because at that point, Drake May was on fire. The star was rising sharply. He made the comment, if the other quarterback happens to get hurt, it's not our fault. That's our job to knock him out. So much has happened since then. That's sort of been lost to the corners of my mind, but Drake has not forgotten. I mean, I thought it was very interesting that he brought that up today when we were asking him just about Pitt's reputation as, being a team that likes to try to bully you, likes to get physical and rough you up. I thought that was super interesting. And
Tyler Wiltz.
Yeah, it wasn't like Servassier Dennis or Kalijah Cansey. Like, Pitt defense put guys in the NFL. Cansey was defensive player of the year, right? And a first round pick. He was a monster. I remember when the NFL draft was going this spring, I told my daughter when he got picked, I was like, you might see a Carolina highlight here, because I remember he sacked Drake like 3 or 4 times. And sure enough, boom. I actually called that one right. But I was also thinking, just on the Drake subject, wasn't it Narduzzi who outed is not the right word? Wasn't he the one that said, hey, these teams are coming after Drake May in the portal and offering him $5 million? I think he was the one that, for whatever reason, said it, right? Is that true?
Yeah, he brought it up initially. Well, not initially, because we had certainly heard the rumors, but,
right, but he
put it into the public ether. Alabama should have offered more, because good God, they are terrible at quarterback. I mean, it's fascinating to watch a team like that anyway.
Yeah, real quick point on that while I'm thinking about it. I was reading the ESPN article earlier, and they were talking about Alabama's quarterback struggles, and they brought up that Drake May at one point was an Alabama commit. So what would it look like? Because they were talking about how they went from Hurts to Tua, Mac Jones, Bryce Young. So they were like, Drake was supposed to be right after that. So, just throwing that out there for your dinner table.
It's an interesting thought.
They would be in the national championship race without question.
Right. It's always interesting to hear Drake say, it's not easy to tell Nick Saban no. Like, you're like a 17-year-old dude. Like, that's always interesting. I feel like when Drake brings those up.
Speaking of John's shirt, this is a great one. Yeah, John does Seahawk on the beat right before this and didn't switch, even though that would be old UNCW colors.
It's funny, Adam, that you brought it up too, because I spend a long time antagonizing about what I'm going to wear on this show. I wake up on Tuesday mornings thinking about, can I wear this shirt on the show, or is it not? And I think about, am I wearing the same shirt twice? I think about all these things. I don't think anybody cares. I've never noticed what any of you three are wearing, but I spent a long time, because I also can't wear anything, Carolina blue. You have to be color neutral. So
you
there's
got
a whole
cookout. You got a Carolina blue cookout shirt that started a heck of a discussion.
That's right. This is one of my golf shirts, by the way. So,
This is Kiss Army, circa 1975, showing my age.
John, you look great. I didn't mean to heckle you too much.
Not at all. Hey, you know what? That heckle is fine. I've received a few heckles this week about my picking Minnesota. Those are a little tougher to stomach. I'm not running from it. I was the only one to pick Minnesota on the panel. And I doubled down last week on the show. So you know what? I have to own that, just like I own the shirt choice here.
Yeah, and we need to. Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I'd rather somebody own it than run from it. and what we need to start doing, and somebody on the message board or in the chat said we need to start publishing our picks every week. We need to do something like that and keep up with it, and then have some sort of award. I think I've got an old World Wrestling Federation Championship belt that we can recreate into the IC Pick'em Challenge champions.
And we could make the loser, as G. Dixon suggests in the chat, let's just say John loses. I'm not saying he will, but hypothetically, let's say John loses. Yeah, we could do some sort of punishment, like, you lose your fantasy football league, you have to do whatever. Maybe he needs to sing the fight song, or we could, let's think about this. We can take recommendations from our loyal audience throughout the season.
Getting a little nervous over here.
When November comes around, we can settle on what John, I'm just saying John hypothetically again, what John would be doing if he loses the picks challenge. This is something we can all think about as a collective group.
Well, Jeremiah's sitting there quiet, but he's had Carolina at 8-4. So they might be singing a duet. And it won't be the North Carolina fight song. It'll be the Minnesota Golden Gophers fight song.
Well, I picked them to beat Minnesota. I picked them to beat Minnesota.
Speaking of it, shout out to the Minnesota fans that came down. I mean, every single Minnesota fan that we ran across, except one guy that kept yelling at me, telling me, "You will know Tyler Nubin before this game is over." Except that one guy, all great people, looking forward to the return trip. Minnesota State Fair, Minnesota Twins, Minnesota North Carolina football, Labor Day weekend. Man, I can't wait to that. And it's, 360 days away, already looking forward to it.
Is that the opener for 2024?
Unless they have a week 0 game,
right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe they can play Campbell again on the week 0 or something, or whoever they've got scheduled up. But yes, Labor Day weekend, which I believe that Saturday is August 31st. So roughly 50 weeks away. Looking forward to it already. Slagle points out August 31st, 2024. So it'll be here before you know it. So anyway, looking forward to it. Anything left before I take a break? Because I want to come back after the break and sort of talk more in depth about this trip to Pittsburgh, because I do think it's sort of I think somebody in the press said litmus test, and Max said they're all litmus tests. But anything left before I do this fabulous Johnny T-shirt read? John, do you want to do the Johnny T-shirt read?
Tommy, it's getting colder outside, and it's time to take a look at that wardrobe. Maybe see, hey, you know what? I need to go get a new jacket. I need to go get a new hoodie for myself to go purchase at Johnny T-Shirt. They have a location on Franklin Street. You can go stop by. It's a great location right next to Cosmic Cantina on Franklin Street. If you can't stop by in person, or if you're not going to be in Chapel Hill between now and the next UNC home game, you can always go to johnnytshirt.com. They have everything you need on their e-commerce store. Use the Inside Carolina code to get an extra discount, 10% off on your purchase. Tommy, we're going to take a break here. We're going to let the national guys pay the bills. John Siegley, our true producer, is going to get this ad break in, and we'll be back to talk more UNC football.
We're back, and that, folks, if you're just joining us now on the live chat, that just warms my heart to see producer John just sort of take over the reins of On the Beat. Aren't you out next week?
I am out next week, yes.
Oh,
I know. So that's
blaze of glory.
We've got to get our ducks in a row for next week. You're listening to On the Beat. Jeremiah, Adam, John, myself, Johnny T-Shirt, that sponsor that John Bowman so wonderfully did not read, just did it on the fly. Those are the best kind of ad reads. Support those guys. Seriously. Get on Franklin Street. And, Johnny T-Shirt won't be like Canes. Is the Canes open yet on Franklin Street?
Mm-hmm.
That mess has been coming soon, longer than, Johnny T-Shirt's always there, and they always deliver, so take care of them. All right, Freddie Kitchens comment. Let me find it, Adam. You told me to mark it. I said I would, and I did. And
somebody got it. I don't even know how to do that stuff. I'm not smart enough.
It's all right. We too many chefs in the kitchen, and we'll get our hands cut. Is this
Well, I just wanted to tell M. Cam, that would not be a punishment. I mean, I love Freddie Kitchens. I love that dude. I will go out on a limb and say Freddie enjoys me some of the time. I think we have a great relationship. I mean, if I see Freddie around, I love talking to Freddie. I love talking to him on the record and off the record. I mean, Freddie is what a find he has been, I think about Kamari Morales telling us, Jeremiah remembers it, and TA, you probably were there too, in the preseason, that he had seen people talking crap on social media about Freddie Kitchens being an NFL retread and all this stuff. I mean, gosh, I think he has been fantastic. Okay. Oh, I see M. Cam's talking to me now. Oh, you would pay for you don't have to do that, baby. Well, you can pay producer John. He's.
Oh yeah, you can just make
out.
Yeah, are you an Inside Carolina Premium subscriber? Because we would put that on Super Premium. $99.99 a month. Your first month's free.
Any day of the year. I would love to sit down with Freddie Kitchens for a 60-minute style. Let's do this, Freddie. I mean, the stories the guy has are just unreal.
You know what caught me the most the other day when he was with the availability on Wednesday, a couple Wednesdays ago? He's not even 50 years old.
Right.
And think of the wealth of knowledge that's in that head, and he's not even 50. And that made me feel old. But then
say they would love to have Freddie as the next head coach. I think Freddie's he's just awesome. I would think I wouldn't be against him being I don't know how Bubba Cunningham feels, and he says a lot because I tend to try to check with him a lot if there's a succession plan. He says there's no max session plan, but I don't think Freddie would be a bad pick, and I think Freddie's having a great time doing what he's doing right now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's great to talk to. Love guys that'll just tell it like it is. I mean, there's plenty of coach speak in the world. So when somebody pops up and just gets more free with it, gets more, offers up exactly what comes out with very little filter, it's great. He's one of those guys. North Carolina's got more than one, and I think Mac's gotten more that way over the years. And, I'm not a fan of that. Got to go watch the tape. We'll see what happened type guys, and we all know that North Carolina's had their share of those. Jeremiah, get in here. Favorite North Carolina assistant coach to talk to?
I've not thought about it. Oh, that is a good question. Favorite assistant coach. I liked when we had Charlton Warren. I thought he had some good stuff to say. I thought, very engaging, everything like that. So far, I'm gonna say probably Charlton Warren. Was cool. And I actually really enjoyed talking to Freddie Kitchens too. I actually thought the same thing when when our guy put the comment in the chat of the Dateline having to be Adam's punishment. I was like, Adam would love that. Like, I was like, but yeah, man. So yeah. But
Tommy, you had some good moments with Tim Cross last week.
Yeah, I mean, trying to get his grass cut and all that stuff.
That snow shoveled.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
He, I thought Cross is, for a guy that has taken a pounding from the fan base, you can't argue with how their guys have done, and we can argue how and why or whatever. But the bottom line, his unit has produced this year, and I thought Cross was great to talk to as well. Looking forward to tomorrow's availability. Stay tuned to Inside Carolina for that.
Tommy
Thigpen and Tamari Fox, and I think Tamari Fox is going to be a good one. I had this up. John took it down. Bigger fan, Adam of Freddie Kitchens or Greg Barnes of Narduzzi?
Whew.
I can't figure out, and I have to ask for Greg. I can't figure out if it's a true fanship of Greg and Narduzzi.
Greg's not here to defend himself.
I know, really. So we will not hold Greg to that. All right, Sean Crawley, and we're having fun with this On the Beat podcast, folks. Not terribly serious tonight. Adam and Jeremiah, is there good accommodations in Pitt? Or are you getting the Motel 6?
We're
what's
in the
that say?
Punxsutawney Inn, aren't we, Jeremiah? Is that what it is?
We're actually spending the night in the stadium, so we're going to be, putting our blankets out on the field, and we're going to be spending the night in the stadium. So,
the sprinklers will wake us up.
Yeah,
I think Jim Hawkins has to take care of. I don't know.
Jim Hawkins will be in the penthouse suite wherever it is. Hawkins will pick you guys up on the way back to the airport. Here's an interesting question, and Adam, you can get in on this, and it's not specifically Carolina related. But who would have predicted start of the season at Clemson FSU would be a nooner? I think that's intentional because is it Fox that's killing the big noon games and having, the Big Ten and whatever at noon? I think the ACC and ESPN wants to have a marquee game at noon. Thoughts on Clemson and Florida State, Adam?
Well, may I toot my own horn here? Right? Can I do some tooting here?
Absolutely.
I actually did it from the beach. I remember thinking, oh my God, I haven't put enough thought into this, but they needed it. One of our 24/7 overlords had contacted us about filling out your ACC predictions or whatever. It was way more involved than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be I'll just do a 1 through 14. It was, it took me way longer than I wanted, but I predicted this would have been in early July that FSU, I know this is not crazy, would go into Clemson and win that game, which is now on Saturday. I actually predicted in that one, for some reason, I predicted Carolina to go to Clemson and beat them. But in our picks for this, I picked Carolina to lose to Clemson. I guess I'm not being uniform, but I mean, the way FSU played at Boston College gives you a lot of pause, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Of course, the way Clemson played at Duke gives you a lot of pause. I think FSU is a narrow favorite, like a 1.5, 2-point favorite. I'm not sure. That's it. If you're a UNC, if you obviously want UNC to have the best season it can, who do you want to win that game? Who would you want to win that game, John? If you're looking out for UNC's best interests, do you think Clemson or FSU?
I would say you want Clemson to win because Clemson is still on the schedule. And, we've talked about all off season long. You're trying to take advantage of Drake May's final season. You want that game against Clemson to be as big a window as possible. If you're playing a 6-3 Clemson team at that point, I don't think that game has quite as much meaning. But Tommy, you're shaking your head. Do you disagree?
Yeah, because I've thought about this far too much. Carolina's got to beat Clemson regardless.
Right.
So if Carolina goes 7-1, beats Clemson, and Clemson's 7-1, then they get the tiebreaker no matter what else happened. Do you want a Florida State? Do you want one team in the conference to be 8-0 or 8-0, 9-0, 8-0? Or do you want a bunch of teams at 7-1, 6-2 So, and I think this game for Florida State is that. Florida State, they were sick. Jason Staples will tell you the entire team had the flu against Boston College. And that may be the case, but realistically, they very easily could have lost that game, but for a terrible face mask penalty late. So I flip-flopped. I kind of think that it doesn't matter if Carolina doesn't beat Clemson, but you put a loss on Clemson, and maybe the Clemson-Carolina game's not as important, depending on what else happens. I don't think Clemson – and Clemson lost to Duke, so that would be two losses.
Got one loss.
Yeah, so I tend to think – I don't know. I say all that to say I have no idea. Yeah. I don't care. But I want to see if Dabo can talk about bringing your own guts like he's done so many times after Clemson wins big ball games, because I do think that could be a significant changing of the guard in the ACC if Florida State goes in there and whips Clemson.
And they don't lose at home. So, yeah, it would be right. It would be a change in the guard in several different categories.
Exactly. So just the bottom line is Carolina's got to win. You win out, nothing else matters. Let me see if this is a fireable, bannable offense here.
Oh, man. God.
I'm sorry.
I don't know who's who. Am I the old one? Adam McKnight.
The young bucks just laughing their butts off down there.
Hey, yo, Adam McKnight, do not answer that question. Let them guess. Let them figure out which one is which.
Adam McKnight, if I could ban you from the chat, my friend, I would ban you to eternity.
Is that Ross Martin in disguise? Because I believe he just said the very same thing.
Well, you do have a little more hair than me, and I'm a little more grayed out, so. Oh my God! What a terrible way to
be associated with Tommy.
Just turn. No, hey, at least you're a good talker. That is they always end up winning in the end. All right, serious stuff. Tony Dowd asks, and this is for you, Jeremiah. Do we think Drake May will be taking any more hits like he did Saturday? I hope he realizes how important it is to hold on the ball and slide. Drake was asked that after the game. He was asked that today. One thing that caught my ear, he said, I'm not going to change the way I play. Yeah, I do need to get out of bounds or slide or whatever, but I'm not going to change the way I play. He's just not the type of guy that's going to consciously avoid contact in the heat of the battle, is he, Jeremiah?
Yeah, he's going to take some hits. I don't know if he'll take one like he took in that first quarter, or I think it was actually the first drive, because it was that one, and I think App State got him pretty good later. In
the 2-point conversion.
The 2-point conversion. Yeah, I could see it, honestly, especially if the game gets close and they do need him to like really start moving around. And because if you remember the App State game before overtime, the drive that would have been the game-winning drive had the kick attempt gone in. That was even a drive where they needed him to use his legs a little bit and like really be a little bit more active. So that's the type of player he is. What's interesting? He was saying that we all know that he looks up to Sam Howell. They still have a really good relationship, and he brought up Sam Howell again today, and he was like, "Well, I never saw Sam Howell slide and go out of bounds." So that's where his mentality is at. And when you're in that game mode, you're not necessarily thinking all the time about am I gonna get hurt? Am I whatever? Like he was saying, I see a first down marker. I'm gonna go try to get to the first down marker. When you do that, you put yourself in a position to get hit. But that, again, I'm not saying that as a negative. That's the type of player he is. That's how he plays the game. So, yeah, I could see, it's like that Minnesota one. I mean, that was a hit. So
that dude popped him.
That guy, he got him. He got him really good. So I don't know that hit will happen, but he'll put himself in a position to, where, they'll bring him down a few times if he gets outside the pocket. And that's not just, Pitt, but that could be, any team really.
The point I wanted to sort of to piggyback on Jeremiah here was it was an interesting moment. And it's cool. Obviously being in person is, with what we do is better than the Zoom stuff, in my opinion. And it was a cool little moment, I thought, today when he was talking about that. As Jeremiah said, he's talking about the first down sticks. He made a comment. He said, he was admitting that, yes, he does not need to take hits like that. Obviously, he doesn't. And then he cut his eyes just to the side real quick, which Drake has been doing some stuff like this year. I mean, Drake is a prankster. he'll give you a wink. There's a couple times he'll give you a wink real quick, and it's like, what are you up to, Drake? Like while he's answering these questions. But it was a question from Chip Alexander today of the News and Observer, and he cut his eyes back toward where Jeremiah and I were sitting. I don't know if you can pick it up on the video. And he looked back at Chip and he's like, but you see those sticks and it's hard to turn it off. Or I don't know if he said turn it off, but he was basically saying, you see those sticks and I just cannot slide. And he gave that look like, yeah, I probably will have to say the good public relations stuff here, but I don't know, I don't know if you can count on him sliding Saturday night when he's trying to get a first down. They went through the whole thing last year, as we all know, of trying to get him to stop hurdling people. He just was hurdling people early in the season. I mean, it was, you had the Virginia Tech one where he should have never tried to hurdle. I think Armani Chapman was actually over there for Virginia Tech that day when he tried to hurdle like 2 or 3 guys. But I just thought that I wanted to add that I thought that was a really neat little moment when Drake, he literally gave a couple of us the side eye, like, are you listening here? And then he said, it's just hard to, I'm paraphrasing, it's hard to turn it off when you see those sticks.
We've got a few more questions here in the chat. If you want to get your question, make sure to do the chat here on the YouTube version of the show. This one is for Tommy from Alan Minton. Do we think Blackwell will be ready for Saturday after that major hit he took? Can you update the viewers on the injury update Mac Brown gave about Gavin Blackwell?
Well, Mac said, and Jeremiah and Adam can correct me if I'm wrong, he said he'd be evaluated day to day and have to go through the test, aka sounded like protocols.
Right, he said it without saying it. Right.
So we know what that means. But look, that field is hard, and that was a rough hit. And if my memory is correct, it was pretty much face down on it. He's in a situation where you got to worry about the health of the player, and North Carolina is over the top, and rightfully so, in protecting their guys when it comes to concussions. We remember several years ago, I don't know, it's been 5 or 6 or 7 now, that Fedora talked about concussions and got himself in trouble when North Carolina is on the leading edge of concussions in football and all the steps they were taking. So if there's any question about his health, be it a concussion or anything else or an upper body, then you sit him and you let him get healthy. And because, number one, they preach consistently about it's all about the player, it's about the player. And I expect them to do that again. But if he's cleared, then he's going to be ready to go. And Pittsburgh can give up some deep shots, and Gavin Blackwell's certainly a guy that can get there.
This next question is from Jimbo Whitfield. He asks, how can UNC keep up the intensity playing a seemingly down Pitt team? Jeremiah, did you pick up on that at all in the press conferences this week? Do you get the sense that UNC thinks this is a down Pitt team, or is the focus, do you think, the same as it's been for the first 3 games?
To be honest, I didn't really get that sense. I didn't really get the sense that they look at Pitt as a, we'll see this. Cedric Gray did say that they're a less talented team than they had been in the past, which is true. So I will say that, but I think mostly, definitely from the coaching staff, they're kind of looking at this like, we're 3-0. We're not trying to screw this up. We're not trying to, blow this 3-0. And then from the players, I honestly got the same thing. I mean, the Cedric Gray quote that was probably the only one, but he even was saying schematically they do a lot of the same things. You saw Drake talking about the physicality that they like to play with and understanding that. So, how can UNC keep the intensity? I think it kind of goes back to, what I was talking about earlier of you understand what can be accomplished because you were so close to it last year, on all 3 kind of fronts. So I think that's kind of how you do it. I think it's, and again, bringing up the App State game just one more time, I saw some people saying, UNC always plays down to the competition. Again, that was one where App State was just more prepared than they were. So, but I do think that's part of it. I think your game plan and how you approach, approaching practice, but approaching just having a system in place to play Pittsburgh. I think all of that, intertwines together. Like, how prepared you are can probably impact your intensity too. Like, just as simple as knowing what you're doing, and playing with that freedom and playing with that confidence. So, I think they should be able to. This is the first true road game. It's out of state. It's, a different environment and things like that. So I'm not saying it's going to be easy for UNC, because I'm just not going to say it's going to be an easy game for them. But I'm not quite as concerned. But we will see. We've seen UNC in this position before, so it is a time will tell situation. But I think just having that preparation set in place could probably help them out a lot.
I asked Mac on Monday about how do you preach that you have to be consistent. You preach that you have to bring it every game, but how do you actually get that accomplished? And he talked about, and this is something I've always heard in college football, is you probably going to have your guys play their best 4 or 5 times a year. And the rest, and Mac said it, the rest you have to just figure it out. Now, for this North Carolina team, over the last during the MAC era, beyond the MAC era, MAC 2.0, they've always laid an egg when you thought they were turning the corner. And this is one of those games, straight out, that is that game for that to happen. So for me, watching this game is you've got coaching staff that is very well versed in seeing this happen. You've got players who are very well versed in letting it happen. How do they react on Saturday night? And it'll say Greg Barnes said it, and I'll refer to it. He said we will know everything we need to know about this North Carolina team after Minnesota and after Pitt. They handled business against Minnesota. I was impressed with how they handled business against Minnesota. I didn't think Minnesota was great, but again, Carolina can lose that game. Pitt is in the same situation. A desperate team, people in the chat are saying. Phil Dracovic is a good player. Some people have said since he broke his hand or hurt his hand, he hadn't been the same guy. Whatever. He torched Carolina for Boston College 2-3 years ago, whenever it was. Needed a Trey Morrison play to save that game.
2-point conversion.
Yeah.
Pick 2? What
Pick 2.
Yeah.
You needed that play.
I was up there. Yeah.
You needed that play. If he
By the way,
fielded an onside kick like that.
It's the ACC opener for UNC too, to go back to the intensity question.
Yeah, there is no excuses. Yeah, you can get beat, right? You can lose, but you cannot lose because you didn't bring it. And Mac has said, if you do everything you can do and you still get beat, you tip your hat. That can't happen for North Carolina if they're going to accomplish anything this season. Pittsburgh is the classic North Carolina egg game. Not going to say the Egg Bowl, Mississippi State, Mississippi, but it has the potential to be that. I'll be looking to see if North Carolina has gotten over that hump, that hurdle of laying those at least once a season.
Building off of that in terms of improvement and continuing to get better, this is a question from Slagle. This one's for Adam Smith. Where does the offense and defense need to improve the most after 3 games? Adam, what do you think?
That's an interesting question from Slagle. I think I'm inclined to say offensively, I just feel like, okay, so Nate McCullum has been inserted into the offense, is full go, and, obviously went frickin' berserk with the 15 catches, 165 yards. So I think that, I don't know if it's fair to say, like, you sort of reset what you think UNC's offense is, but I don't know if it's an improvement. What I'll be interested to see is where they go from here, having established the fact that Nate McCullum is capable of producing a game like that. I don't think we might not ever see a game like that from him again. Now that, people have seen him do that, opposing defenses. But I think I just think it's offensively, I think it's all about just continuing to find the consistency and the balance that they have shown that they are capable of having. I mean, they ran for 319, I think it was, against App, and then Drake throws for 414 against Minnesota. And by the way, another stat for you, that is the first time in UNC football history that the Tar Heels have had a 200-yard rusher and a 400-yard passer in back-to-back games. It's happened in the same season before, but it's never happened in back-to-back games. Sam Howell and Michael Carter and Javonte Williams were responsible for several in I guess it was 2020. But and by the way, we were talking about that earlier, the Virginia Tech game in 2020. You remember who the starting quarterback was for the Hokies? Hendon Hooker.
Who I thought was a stud.
How the hell
Virginia
did they ever
Tech
let him get out of there? I mean, my God.
They wouldn't play him. I mean, there was one game that if he starts, they easily beat Carolina. And he came in at the very end, and they almost beat Carolina anyway. Yeah, I mean,
it's got to be why Fuente isn't the coach there anymore, I would think, I guess.
I don't know. Maybe there were cash considerations for somebody else or something, but that dude could play. And Virginia Tech, it certainly helped the slide start in the post-Beamer era up there.
And I would say for defense, because I would never want to shortchange Slagle, I think there's a lot to like about how the front seven is played. I think there's a lot to like about the number of bodies they're getting in on the defensive line. I guess what I would say is sort of nailing down who the second corner is opposite Marcus Allen, because you've had Tayon Holloway there. Obviously, I think they would like to have Elijah Huzzie and Marcus Allen at cornerback. I just don't think that's going to happen. I think Huzzie is entrenched now at star because I don't think they trust DJ Jones there. All due respect to DJ Jones. So I think nailing down who your second corner is, I guess right now we asked today, is Armani Chapman the answer? And Cedric Gray wouldn't exactly go there. He was diplomatic about it, but so corner, and then, sort of the rotation at safety, because you have Stick Lane and Will Hardy working back into the mix now. They put a lot of snaps on Gio Biggers and Don Chapman, but Stick Lane had 5 tackles the other day against Minnesota. So I think just sort of, knowing who you have in each particular role, sort of role identification, I guess I would say, for the secondary. I hope that's not too nerdy of an answer.
For what it's worth, on the Pitt depth chart, Armani Chapman is listed first above Tayon Holloway. Take that with a grain of salt, of course. Depth charts are not worth a ton, but it was interesting to see Chapman up there. I have a question for Tommy and a question for Jeremiah before we leave tonight. Starting first with Tommy, who do you predict will be the wide receiver 2? This question is from MCAM.
Before last Saturday, I would have said Kobe Paysor, but he sort of vanished in Nate McCullum's wake.
Caught one ball.
Yeah, for 4 yards, I believe it was. And that was I thought McCullum would free up a ton of guys to do a lot of things. Now, I had no idea in the process of freeing those guys up, he'd catch, 15 balls, 16 balls, and have 20-some targets. But you guys had J.J. Jones today in the Keenan Football Center, who's a fabulous interview, a great kid, bright future ahead of him, whether it's on the football field or in the broadcast booth or on the radio side of it. I mean, just an interesting guy, delightful guy to talk to. And he stepped up. And, when you have a guy like Nate McCullum, who, if Pitt wants to bracket him, which I'm sure they will, then fine. I would love to be an outside receiver if they're going to bracket Nate McCullum, because that means I'm going to have single coverage, and all I got to do is beat one guy, and Drake's going to get me the ball. So who will it be? Well, Blackwell we've talked about. He's got some health issues. We'll see if he plays. If he does not, which is probably a pretty good bet, I would say J.J. Jones is that guy, given how Kobe was last week. Kobe's a slot by nature. But Jeff in the chat says he still think he's number 2, but I think JJ's shown that. And man, Adam and Jeremiah, you guys can get in on this, and y'all talked about it with some of the players. If Andre Green Jr. can just have 1 or 2 big plays and it suddenly click in his brain and for him, then I think we're talking about him being a potential 2 or 3. But Jones, I think Jones right now has to be the number 2 for this team up at Pitt. Pitt's going to give up deep throws if Carolina can get open. I mean, guys have made a ton of money in the NFL off their Pitt tape, and this game offers that for a guy like Jones, a guy like Kobe. So we'll see. So all that for a non-answer, but I still think 65-35 J.J. Jones this week at least.
Speaking of depth chart, this one, Jeremiah, is for you. Tar Heel Wizard asks, who starts at running back this week? Is it British Brooks or is it Omarion Hampton?
I'm thinking they probably do stick with Hampton. I will say it was very interesting last game. They did not find a ton of success early on running the ball. A lot of that was just because that was a lot of, by design. I just pulled it up, just kind of wanted to double check. Hampton last week had 13 carries to Brooks 11. Neither one had great yards per carry days, but Hampton was 3.5 yards a carry, British Brooks 2.3. So I think, honestly, with stuff like that, when the carries are that even split, I mean, they use those guys in similar ways too. Like, you can put whoever out there first, and whoever's just more productive that day is gonna kind of be their guy just that particular day. I do think Hampton probably did. At first, I was thinking, if Brooks was healthy, they'd probably roll him out first against Minnesota. They ended up putting out Hampton anyway, especially after the game he had against App State. So I do think Hampton probably starts it off, but yeah, we'll see. I mean, to me, with that position specifically, I mean, whoever you put out there first, it really just depends on who has the hot hand. I think that's just that type of position. But to answer the question, I will say Omarion Hampton.
And you know what I was thinking as Jeremiah was talking there? Sorry, I hope I didn't step on anybody's feet. How about shout out to Omarion Hampton on the blitz pickup? We wrote about it in the Game Scoop. The touchdown pass to Bryson Nesbitt. Yeah. Like that, I mean, that talk about a coming of age moment. And I know he didn't even touch the ball on the play, but that has been one of the learning curve for Omarion Hampton coming from Clayton, North Carolina, where I'm sure he ran over every hapless fellow in the world. Would you like to try to tackle Omarion Hampton in high school football?
I saw it from field level. I wouldn't have gotten out there. And there were a lot of guys that tried yet did not accomplish that.
I will tell you, as we have, I just love the setup we have where it's me and Jeremiah and Evan Rogers sitting there together. And I will tell you that as we watched that play live, I automatically assumed that was British Brooks. They're both, I mean, we're so high up there and you see a 2. I was like, well, that was really nice blitz pickup by British Brooks at Minnesota. If you guys remember the play, brought the corner off the high side. It was a cornerback blitz. And Omarion was actually lined up on the other side of Drake. He was lined up on the away from the blitz, and he slid over, picked the guy up. Drake throws it to Nesbitt, touchdown Tar Heels. So I just wanted to throw that in there as he was talking about the running backs. I thought that was for a guy that just ran for 234 yards, I thought it was a really neat moment for him and in his development.
He has improved so much in that area. I mean, what's Jason Staples always say on our shows? Number one job of a running back is do not get your quarterback killed. And for him to be able to step up and make that play, and I was trying to find the stats. I think Greg may have referenced it on his on Hampton's ability to improve in that regard. But yeah, I agree with what Jeremiah said. It doesn't really matter who starts. As impressive as North Carolina's win was against Minnesota, the fact that they were able to run it once in the third quarter and then dominate on the ground in the fourth quarter says a lot for me as far as how this season's shaping out. Last year, they won some ball games. They never had a moment like that. It was always the Drake May show doing it. This year, they've got so many more options. They travel to Pitt, I think, ACC Network at 8 o'clock Saturday night. Ton of great football games on all throughout the day. Make sure you check out the game plan on Thursday night here at Inside Carolina, 9 o'clock live. Jason, Greg, and myself. If you didn't watch Taylor Viplis and Jeff Schottmer's show, dropped on Tuesday. Coast to Coast will drop tomorrow. A little basketball break for everybody. Got a baseball article coming out on the Diamond Hills message board. It's fall season for Scott Forbes and the Tar Heels. A lot of new names to learn for the baseball team. And then Saturday, IC Live, 5 to 7, ahead of Pitt, North Carolina at 8 o'clock. Adam and Jeremiah and Mr. Jim Hawkins will be in Pittsburgh, bringing you all the coverage from there. Joey and I will handle the IC Live portion ahead of the game. Johnny T-Shirt's our sponsor. John Bowman's the producer. Jeremiah and Adam are the stars. I'm the host. It's always been fun. Another Tuesday night in the books. North Carolina Pitt, Saturday. I see here every day. Thanks, guys.